Thank you very much, Sajani, for giving us this opportunity to take part in the summarization of the Bhagavad-Gita. Today, we will be doing the summary of the third chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. And as you will see, in Advaita Vedanta, or the school of Vedanta, there is no clear distinction between religious activity and spiritual activity. Karma yoga is a way of doing work in such a way that any action that you do, including this particular action that is being done, is an act of service to the Lord through the service of people. And when you convert every action as a service, then it brings about a certain preparation of the body-mind to spiritual wisdom. So one of the most delightful chapters in the Bhagavad Gita is the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But Karma Yoga is there in so many chapters. But the best we will hear of it here, the opening speaker will be Indumathi, who's already been introduced, and Indumathi will begin with a prayer. Over to you, Induji.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sada Shiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnu Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasanna Vadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye. Starting with the Bhagavad Gita chapter, in the beginning, I would like to thank the organizers and Dr. Hegde sir for having given me this wonderful opportunity to be with you all and share a few words of the third chapter, whatever a little I know. This entire chapter 3 has the link with the previous chapter 2. Arjuna poses a question in such a way that Krishna is forced to repeat the whole gist in a systematic way. After knowing about the qualities of Sthita Prajna from the Lord, Sri Krishna, Arjuna asks him one question. Jayasi chet karmanaste mada buddhir janardana tat kim karmani gore mam niyojayasi Keshava. This third chapter, if he's asking, the first question is, if self-knowledge is considered by you to be superior to action, then why do you engage me in this cruel action? This Gita chapter begins with a question from Arjuna, which is based on the teaching given in the second chapter. Arjuna is confused with regard to Krishna's teaching, even though Krishna has been very clear. Arjuna's confusion is because of this reason. In the second chapter, Krishna began teaching with Jnana Yoga or self-knowledge. He said, the main statement being, Na anushochanti panditaha, in the verse 11. Main statement was, the wise people do not grieve in life. Through this, Krishna emphasized the point that the wisdom alone is the remedy for the problem of grief. This is the foundation of Gita. Ajnanat dukkam jnanat sukham. Thus, Krishna has emphasized Jnanam in the very beginning of the teaching. Jnani will never have delusion in life. Not only Jnanam is the solution of sorrow, Jnanam is the medicine for conflicts, sorrow, and delusion in life also. Karma Yoga is the first stage of sadhana, which makes a person fit for Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga is incomplete without Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is impossible without Karma Yoga. In chapter 2, he has very clearly said, Yadate moha kalilam buddhir veti tarishyati tada gantas nirvedam shrotavyasa shrutasya cha. Initially, you have to go through karmayoga and prepare the mind. Moha kalilam vyati tarishyati. Purify the mind. Oh, Krishna's advice to Arjuna is do karma, purify, gain knowledge, and be free. This is the essence of Gita. In the next slide, we see thus the third chapter will elaborate Karma Yoga portion. With this background, we have to study Arjuna's question. After glorifying Jnanam repeatedly, Mam ghore karmani niyojasi, you are engaging me in this cruel, O Keshava, which does not produce any knowledge. So, it involves blood flow, not just killing Karna, but Arjuna is seeing his dear Bhishma and dear Drona. How can he kill them all? Vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tad ekam vada nischitya yena shreyo hamapniyam. So Arjuna says, through seemingly conflicting statements, you are confusing my intellect as it were. Tell me definitely one of those two by which I will attain the supreme. Arjuna, ekam vada nischitya. Tell me one thing. So you are stressing jnanam. I am confused. I will seek after knowledge is my view. Bhagavan says here, Lokesmin dvivida anishta pura prokta mayanaga jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. Lord Krishna here is not going to advise Arjuna. He is going to say why karma is important. So he starts with this shloka, which is the foundation of the third chapter. He says here, dvivida nishta maya proktaha. Two types of lifestyles are prescribed by me. Asmin loke, in this world, Gita does not have any new thing to be taught. It is only to revive Vedas, which has been revealed in the beginning of creation, and in those Vedas themselves, pravritti and nivritti marga are talked about. Jnana yogena sankhyanam, in the form of Jnana Yoga for the Sankhyas, and Karma Yogena in the form of Karma Yoga to Yoginam for the householders. There is no option at all. Karma Yoga prepared us for knowledge, but it can never give liberation. Na karmanam anarambhat, naishkarmyam purushoshnute, nacha sanyasana deva, siddhim samadhigacchati. So here we see that by avoiding action, a person does not attain liberation. By mere renunciation also, one does not attain liberation or attain moksha. Therefore, again Krishna here says, one should not avoid karma. The first reason he gives in this shloka is that by avoiding or giving up action, you cannot get moksha. You cannot avoid samsara. An ignorant mind will suffer samsara wherever it is. A knowledgeable mind will enjoy wherever it is. Naishkarmyam is a technical word which means moksha or peace of mind. Here is a well-known mantra. Na karmana na prajaya dhanena tyage naike amrutatva manushuhu. So, Krishna clarifies here saying there is moksha through renunciation. Krishna here says that we should add an expression jnana sahita tyagena amrutatva manushuhu. Mere renunciation or detachment cannot give liberation. It should be blessed with and supported by Jnani. In the next slide, we see another mantra of Upanishad, which clarifies this by saying, Vedanta Vijnana Sunischitartha Sannyasa Yoga Yataya Shuddha Sattva te brahmalokeshu paranta kale paramrutat parimuchyanti sarve. Sannyasa is great, but not mere saffron robes, nor mere ashramavasa or running away to Himalayas, but Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitartaha. Sannyasa will work only if it is backed by scriptural studies. Therefore, Krishna says, Sanyasanat eva, mere renunciation cannot give moksha. Knowledge alone gives moksha. In verse 5, we see Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krite karyate hyavashat karma sarva prakriti jair gunaihi. Here Krishna says, no one can ever remain without action even for a moment, because everyone is helplessly made to do action by the three gunas born out of Prakriti. Sannyasa does not guarantee liberation. Next he says, it is impossible to give up all action. Here Krishna says, giving up of action is impossible. Kshanamapi akarmakrit natishtati. A person cannot remain actionless even for a moment. The more you give up physical action, the mind becomes more proportionately doubly active. So none can ever remain even for a moment without performing action. For everyone is made to act helplessly indeed by the qualities born of Prakriti. Now, karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudatma mityacharasya uchyate. Here, Lord Krishna says, having restrained the sense organs of action, that deluded person who remains dwelling on the sense objects mentally is called a hypocrite. In the next slide, we see where Krishna says, if the mind is not ready for sannyasa, it can have a double life. Externally, there is detachment. Internally, the person may be dwelling upon only worldly things, and such a life is a life of hypocrisy. Inaction is dangerous, and therefore Sri Krishna tells Arjuna not to think of sannyasa, not to think of inaction, but to think of an active life, which we will see in the next shloka. Next slide. Yes tvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate Arjuna karmendriyaihi karmayogam asaktasya vishishyate. But having restrained the organs of knowledge by the mind, he who pursues karma yoga with the organs of action without attachment excels. Grihasthashrama is an ideal ashrama because it is a life in society where there is a scope for contribution so that I can cleanse my life. One can fulfill artha, kama desires. Parallelly, it is an ideal ashrama for service to the society. Shastra prescribes grihastha not merely for artha, kama, which is only secondary and subsidiary. Indriyani manasaniyamya, even though a grihastha is given full freedom to fulfill his artha, kama, which means security, money, possessions, house, status, name, fame, etc. They are all security. These are seen only in the grihastha and not in the sannyasashrama, which is exclusively meant for fulfilling moksha desire only. A grihastha should fulfill his worldly desires by indriyani samyamya, by regulating the sense organs, which means without violating dharma, morality, artha, kama. It should not be primary. Dharma should be primary. He should be asaktaha, should not get attached to anything. And such a person who follows karma yoga excels. He is superior to sannyasi who chooses sannyasa without getting maturity and gets into trouble. Therefore, a grihastha is superior to an immature sannyasi, says Krishna. Niyatam kuru karmatvam karma jyayo hyakarmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhyed akarmanaha. Then in chapter 2, there are 2 verses which says karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. The next one is yogastaha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. In these 2 shlokas, karma yoga has been summarized. Krishna gives teaching only based on the Vedic teaching. The word karma here means proper action, and the word yoga here means proper attitude. For Arjuna now, the duty is to fight the Mahabharata war, which is not a pleasant duty at all. It involves the killing of the near and the dear ones. So here, one should have Ishvara Prasada Buddhi. Both pleasant or unpleasant should be offered to God. Hence, the benefit is there is pleasantness in any kind of duty. Krishna calls it samatvam. Lord Krishna defines karma yogi as mukta sango anahamvadi dhrityutsaha samanvitaha. So, if I have prasada buddhi, whatever Bhagavan gives is what I deserve, and it is the just result. I take it and accept it this way. Krishna here says, akarmanaha karma jyayaha. Arjuna, action is always superior to action. Inaction. Akarmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasiddhe. If you resort to inaction, even living in the world will become impossible. So the Lord says, niyatam karmam kuru. Now, Ignartha karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangas samachara. The world is bound by actions other than those performed for the sake of sacrifice, that is meant for yajna. Therefore, perform action for the sake of yajna. And in the previous shloka, Krishna has presented karma yoga as Ishvara Yajna, Ishvara Vidhi. Now it is said, Ishvara Yajna, look upon karma yoga as worship of the Lord. We have been given whatever is needed. Everything is provided for our smooth living. Then why can't we worship the Lord for all these gifts? Therefore he says, Yajnartham karma, karma yoga is for the worship of the Lord. It is converting very life into puja. Yadyat karmam karomi tattadakilam shambho tavaradhanam. O Lord, let my very living become an offering to you. Shankaracharya, Bhagavad Pada, tells in his Saundarya Lahari, O Mother, wherever I go, take it as pradakshinam. Whatever I am eating, make it an offering. Pranaya swaha, Brahmane swaha. Thus, karma yoga is, work is worship. In the next slide, we can offer our work to the Lord through bhavana, through attitude. Thus, it is said, Yajnartham karma. Karma yoga is a yajna. Anyatra ayam lokaha karma bandhanaha. If you do not convert your action into worship, then every action will become a bondage for you. So, convert your life into worship and tell yourself, whatever comes is prasada. Krishna says, action by itself neither binds nor liberates, but it all depends upon how you handle the action. Action minus devotion is bondage. Action plus devotion is liberation. This is the basic principle of karma yoga. Tadartham karma kaunteya. Do what you have to do as an offering to the Lord. How? Mukta sangas samachara. without expecting anything in return. Next we have Sahayagna Praja Srishtva Purovacha Prajapatihi Anena Prasavishyadhvam Yeshavos Twishta Kamadhuku. Having created human beings along with Yagna, in the beginning of the creation, the Creator said, "May you prosper by this Yagna. Let this Yagna be a source of all desired objects for you." In the next slide, we see that such a life of contribution, life of sacrifice, life of sharing, called Yagna way of life, is prescribed by the Vedas themselves for our benefit. Along with the creation, Bhagavan gave out Vedas also. The Vedas are the manual which prescribes a life of harmony called Yagna. By following the manual, one can lead a life of Yagna. You will prosper. Otherwise, you will be the cause of your own destruction, says Krishna. Prajapatihi Praja Srishtva. Lord Brahma created all the living beings, including the human beings, long ago. The ultimate growth is discovery of the fact that I am the Atma. Infinite expansion is the spiritual growth. Cater to the spiritual growth while you are pursuing material thing. Such a balanced pursuit of material, dharma, artha, kama, as well as self-knowledge is called karmayoga. Now we see here, Devan bhavayatanena, te deva bhavayantuvaha, parasparam bhavayantaha, shreya paramavapsyata. With this, you do nourish the gods, and may those devas nourish you. Thus, nourishing one another, you shall attain supreme good. So, continuing with the same concept of yajna, karma yoga as yajna, Krishna says, by following karma yoga yajna, you are pleasing the gods of the creation and the devatas. Devatas are the presiding deities over the natural forces. Indra, the lord of rain and thunder. Varuna is the lord of oceans. Similarly, Yamaha, Prajapati, the nature will be propitiated by harmonious life. You are living in cooperation with nature, but not conquering nature. Karma yoga, performed as a worship of the Lord, is yajna, but performed out of fear is called agna. Then we have Ishtan Bhogan Hivo Devaha Dasyante Yajna Bhavitaha Tair Dattana Pradhayebhyo Yo Bhunte Stena Yevasaha. The gods who are nourished by yajnas will indeed give you the desired pleasures. He who enjoys their gifts without offering to them is verily a thief, says Lord Krishna. In the next slide, Krishna repeats the unalterable ritualistic law that devas cherished by yajnas will provide us with the desired objects. He who enjoys objects given by the devas without offering his own yajna efforts into it is termed here by Krishna as a social thief. The Shastras say that for all the papams, there is prayaschittam. There is one papam for which there is no prayaschittam, and that is the papam of ingratitude, which says, Kritagne nasti nishkritihi kritagnaha, means for an ungrateful person, nishkritihi nasti, there is no prayaschittam. Yajnashishtashinas santaha muchyante sarvakilvishaihi bhunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyatmakarana. Here we see that these noble ones who partake the sacred remnants of yajnas are freed from all sins. But those sinful ones who cook for their own sake partake of sins. Here, Krishna looks at karma yoga as a spiritual purifier. Chitta Shodakam, there is only one means of attaining moksha, and that is spiritual wisdom or Atmagnanam, which can liberate a person, and that can take place only when the mind is pure. The primary result is Chitta Shodakam and Mukti Sadhakam. In the next slide, we see Yajna Shishtashinas Santaha, those who convert their life into a worship and receive the consequences as Ishvara Prasada, Sarva Kilbishaihi Muchyante. They become free from all the papams. Medicine has the curing property. It is also Bhagavan's gift. If medicine is not consumed as Ishvara Prasada, Lord Krishna uses a strong word saying, you are a papi. So, a selfish person goes away from spiritual knowledge. A selfless person goes towards the spiritual knowledge. Annad bhavanti bhutani, parjanyad anna sambhavaha, yagnad bhavati parjanyo, yagna karma samudbhavaha. All beings are born out of food. Food is born out of rain. Rain comes out of yagna. Yagna is born out of karma. Earlier, Lord talked about karmayoga as a purifier, shodhakam as agna, as yagna. Now, in shloka 14 and 15, Lord presents karmayoga as dharma. Dharanat dharma. That which maintains the harmony of the creation is called dharma. Our life is interconnected with fellow human beings, animals, plants, forests, rivers, and oceans, environment, and seasons. Man and nature are interconnected. Plants and trees need carbon dioxide and they release oxygen. This cycle is already existing, which indicates harmony. We have many cycles in this creation. This shloka is an example to show how harmonious the creation is. Then, how do we maintain the balance of nature? Krishna gives the answer, Yajna Karma Samudbhavaha. One maintains a balance of nature only by Karma Yoga. Karma Brahmodbhavam Vidhi Brahmakshara Samudbhavam Tasmad Sarvagatam Brahma Nityam Yagne Pratishtitam. Karma Brahmodbhavam Vidhi. Know that karma is born out of the Veda, that is Brahma. Brahmakshara Samudbhavam. Veda is born out of the Lord. Tasmat Brahma Sarvagatam. The Veda is all pervading and is Nityam Pratishtitam Yagne, always employed in Yagna. Know that action comes from Veda, that is Brahmaji, the creator, and the Veda is born out of the Lord. Therefore, Veda is all pervading and is always employed in Yagna. Evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartayati hayah aghayurindriyaramo moham partha sajivati. What happens to him who disobeys? Lord Krishna says, he who does not follow here the wheel thus set revolving is of a sinful life. Rejoicing in the senses, he lives in vain, O Partha. A karma yogi measures his success in terms of his capacity to give, whereas a karmi measures his success in terms of his capacity to grab, hoard, and possess. Lord Krishna strongly criticizes a person who has taken more and shared less. He calls them as sinners. Evam pravartitam chakram. In this manner of give and take, the universal cycle is maintained. Yaha nanu anuvartayati. A person who does not believe in the principles of giving and sharing, such a person is called a aghayuhu, a sinner. Indriya Ramaha. He is a person who spends his life For his sensory pleasures alone, he does not consider anything superior to that. Moga sahajivati. Such a person lives in vain because he is neither useful to himself nor useful to the society. Now, the Lord himself supposes Arjuna to ask the following question: is the wheel of action thus set in motion to be followed by all, or by him only who has not yet attained firm faith in the path of knowledge? Which will be continued by Dr. Sathyanarayana. Hari Om. Thank you.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. My sincere pranams to School of Ancient Wisdom for giving us this opportunity of summarizing Bhagavad Gita chapters. And I thank Indumathi ji for explaining initial part of the chapter 3, Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga, the path of selfless service. So in this chapter, verses 1 to 7 talks about introduction. Verses 2 to 20 talks about Karma Yoga proper. Verses 20 to 29 tells us about the role of a wise person, and verse 30 to 35 summarizes Karma Yoga. Verse 36 to 43, it deals with problem of desire and its solution. So far, we have seen Indumathi ji explaining us how Karma Yoga can be seen from 4 different angles. Agnya, take it as a commandment of the Lord. Second, Yagna, as a work with a sense of gratitude. Third angle is Chitta Shodakam, as a best method of cleansing your mind of Raga, Dvesha, Kama, Krodha, etc. And fourth angle as Dharma. Verse 17 and 18, next slide, talks about a Jnani. Verse 17 says, he, that is in the sense, a Jnani, revels in himself and is totally contented. Verse 18 talks about a Jnani does not depend on anyone in the creation. So with Jnanam, a person slowly transcends from world dependency to God dependency and then self-dependency. Verse 3.20, verse 3. Next slide, talks about Karma Yoga as duty. Abiding by duty alone, people like Janaka have attained liberation. At least considering the upliftment of the society, you should act. Here, with the example of King Janaka, it is shown that Karma Yoga is the only way of life by which cosmic harmony can be maintained, a social harmony can be maintained. So having given us 4 different angles, Krishna tells us to follow Karma Yoga, whichever aspect appeals to us. Next slide. Verse 21 says, whatever action great persons perform, common people follow. Whatever standards they set, all the world pursues. Krishna says a Jnani does not require any sadhana because he has already accomplished the sadhyam or the goal. A means is required only to accomplish the goal. And after the accomplishment of the goal, mean becomes irrelevant. Therefore, a Jnani does not require Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga. He has no do's and don'ts. And Krishna says, even though a Jnani does not require any discipline, he should follow the discipline to serve as a role model to other people. Because a Jnani being great, the whole society will be looking upon him. Krishna, therefore, Arjuna, even if you are a Jnani, better do your duty. Not for your sake, but for the society's sake. It is not an advice, a Jnani alone, but it is an advice to all important people who count in the life of a younger generation, be it a father, mother, teacher, or a boss. Leading by example, becoming a role model is much more important, is what Krishna emphasizes and tells Arjuna to fight and do his duty. Verse 22 to 25 talks about a Jnani's act. Ajnani's actions have likes and dislikes, and there is a sense of self-incompleteness. For him, happiness is dependent upon the external factors. There is attachment towards an expectation from the world, and if it is unfulfilled, it leads to anxiety and disappointment. All his actions purify mind and leads to gaining knowledge. A Jnani's action, every action of his is with the sense of fulfillment, and happiness for him is independent of external factors. Verse 26 to 29. Next slide. Duties talks about the duties of a Jnani in society, the do's and don'ts. Encourage Ajnanis to continue with worldly pursuit dharmically, not to encourage renunciation or detachment. He says that is not must and should. And inspire Ajnanis to convert result-oriented actions to karmayoga and to perform karmayoga with commitment. Verse 27 to 28, Jnani's actions versus Ajnani's actions are described. Every individual is made up of lower I and higher I. The lower I is ego or ahankara, which recognizes with body-mind complex, and there is karta bhokta aspect involved in it. Whereas the higher I is pure consciousness. All spiritual sadhanas is to discover and own up this I, thus declaring Aham Brahmasmi. Ajnani has a lower I dominant, and there are likes and dislikes. They perform actions for fulfillment. Whereas a Jnani has a higher I dominance and the sense of Purnatvam and is unaffected by the lower I. They perform actions with fulfillment. Ajnani performs action for fulfillment, whereas Jnanis perform action with fulfillment. That is the difference. From verse 30 to 35, Krishna summarizes the whole teaching and talks about the significance of karma yoga. And this 30th verse is considered the most important verse in this chapter. He gives pancha angani, the 5 principles of karma yoga here. This verse says, offering all actions onto me with a mind that is discriminating, fight without expectations, without the sense of possession, and without anxiety. The verse says, Adhyatma Chetasa, that is Viveka Buddhi. So with a discriminating mind, Karmani Sanyasya, renouncing actions onto me, Nirasaha, devoid of expectations about the future, Nirmama Bhutva, being devoid of mindness, and Yuddhasya Vijata Jvaraha, that is fight or act without anger or anguish. Verse 30 to 35 says about significance of karma yoga. So here a 5-point program to become a karma yogi is given. Have a spiritual goal as primary priority of your life. There has to be Ishvara Arpana Buddhi or Sarva Karmani Anusthana. Dedicate all actions as an offering to the Lord and convert work into worship. Nirasi, be prepared for all types of future situation because future is totally not under your control. Nirmanaha, when you succeed, do not claim the total credit. Let there be humility in success. And Vijata Jvaraha, that is maintain mental poise, mental equanimity or mental balance. If the first 4 factors are followed, the 5th factor is almost a natural consequence, and Krishna points out that whoever follows karma yoga has spiritual success. In verse 33.36, Arjuna asks a question here again. O Krishna, then prompted by what does this person commit sin, even though unwilling, as though he is forcibly persuaded? For this, Krishna replies in verse 3.37. He says, it is this desire, it is this anger, it is born of Rajoguna. It is insatiable and very sinful. Know this to be enemy in this life. So the materialistic and attraction take away the entire life of a person, that he never recognizes that he has got a spiritual aspect which also has to be developed. We are made up of both material as well as spiritual personality. Artha Kama is important. At the same time, Dharma Moksha is also important. Our life should be well balanced, in which I take care of both the needs. In case of this person, Artha Kama becomes so important that he has no time for spirituality at all. So he gives desire and anger as the enemy. Verse 3.38 says, just as a fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is masked by dust, and an embryo is concealed by womb, similarly, one's knowledge gets shrouded by desire. He emphasizes on desire here also. Krishna says, Kama Krodha is the obstacle. So naturally, the question is how to handle them. And Krishna deals with Kama. Obstructed Kama is Krodha. Therefore, if we know how to handle desire, we can handle anger as well. So verse 3.41, Krishna gives solution, the parihara. He gives it in two aspects. One is temporary aspect and the other is permanent aspect. Verse 3.41 gives temporary solution. O Arjuna, therefore, controlling the sense organ first, may you give up the sinful one, which is the destroyer of Jnana and Vijnana. Kama Krodha is obstacle because a person is preoccupied with their fulfillment and can never be fulfilled. Handling Kama is in two stages. First stage, relative method, and the second stage is absolute or total measure. First stage, follow threefold discipline. Dhamma, that is sense mastery. Just excuse. Dhamma, sense mastery, and Sama, mind mastery, and Viveka, discrimination. I should clearly know world is neither a source of joy nor a source of sorrow. I alone am the source of sorrow and joy, and this is called as Viveka. So with this three discipline, he gives a relative measure of handling desire. Verse 3.42, Krishna gives a solution, parihara, which is permanent. By these three methods, given in last verse, we learn to handle the problem of karma, and this is only relative solution. Absolute solution is self-knowledge, he says. Discovery of fullness within myself. Sense organs are higher than sense objects. Mind is higher than sense organ. Intellect is higher to mind, and Atma Jnanam is higher to intellect. So therefore, Atman eva Atmana tushtaha. Atma Jnana alone is the permanent solution or the parihara, he says. Thus, Arjuna's question is answered. Next slide. So we have seen Arjuna's question asking Krishna as to which is better, Jnana Yoga or Karma Yoga. And if Jnana Yoga is better for the path of liberation, then why he is asked to fight? So it is comparison of relative superiority of karma yoga and jnana yoga that is brought here. And as a part of discussion, Krishna makes certain fundamentals very clear. Number one, there is no choice between karma yoga and jnana yoga. We can never ask this question as to which one is better. It is very clear that jnana yoga is the only means of liberation. And if I have to take to jnana yoga, I have to possess the required qualification, which is purity and maturity and detachment. This quality can be acquired through karma yoga. So which yoga is better is wrong. We have to follow both. That fundamental is made very clear. There is choice with regard to lifestyle that you should take. Either pravritti marga or grihastha, a life in society with family, children, and activity, and the other marga, nivritti marga or sannyasashrama, where there is no responsibilities at all. And Krishna openly says, grihastha is better, a jnani grihastha is better and superior to a ajnani sannyasi as well. So next slide. So we have seen karma yoga being divided into karma, the right action, and yoga, the right attitude. And karma, or the action, involves sattvic action, rajasic action, and tamasic action. And sattvic actions bring about spiritual progress. Rajasic action brings about spiritual stagnation. Tamasic action brings about spiritual regression. Whereas yoga, the right attitude, is of Ishvara Arpana Bhava and Ishvara Prasada Buddhi. Ishvara Arpana Bhava as Karta, dedicating all actions to the Lord. Ishvara Prasada Buddhi as Bhokta. And there has to be samatvam in this, the equanimity of mind to be maintained in this particular bhava. So we have seen action minus devotion is karma, and that leads to bondage. Therefore, having devotion in every action is karma yoga, and this leads to liberation. Very nice poem what I have come across, which describes karma yoga. Work we must, act we ought to, that too with conviction, for self-purification, for world glorification, and for self-liberation. Worry not about the effects, and yield not to the frustration. Work now and always, with the mind fixed, with purity and sincerity, vitality and dexterity. Accept the results, whether good, bad, or mixed. Surrender unto Almighty, and this is true divinity. My friend, equipoise is the secret of life. The skill in action is a thrill in yoga. Practice of this, being true to heart, is an art. Even a little bit of it is sufficient, says Gita. So next slide. So basically, the goal and the means is the essence of our spiritual study is to have a guru, follow karma yoga, acquire the required qualification, follow jnana yoga, and attain liberation or moksha. Thank you.
So much. It was really excellent. And both, it was so crisp and gave us such a wonderful insight, a wonderful summary of chapter 3. Now I'd hand it over to Dr. Hegde. Are you there?
Yes, Sajani, we
Yes.
can have a concluding prayer by Indumathi.
Okay, we'll have the concluding prayer by Indumathi, and then we will have the questions and the Q&A session. So Indumathi.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ
Sajani, if I can put one word, I really compliment both the speakers. It was absolutely brilliant. Karmayoga was very nicely summarized, and the entire chapter was brought out very nicely. This will be a useful video for anybody interested in studying the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was really excellent. The slides were so good and it was so crisp, you know. The whole thing was covered really in a wonderful manner. And now it's open for question and answer. Any questions by the participants? Please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question. Yes. They're all absorbing it still.
I have a question, Sajani.
Okay, go ahead, Ramesh.
This is a question to Sathyanarayana ji. First of all, thank you so much. Really, I felt it was really wonderful. Whatever you shared today, I really felt uplifted. Now, the question I have is pertaining to the second last slide, Sathyanarayana ji. In the school of ancient wisdom, oftentimes we've heard that a guru can be a person, can also be a book, or maybe even a situation. So how important is it to